Plane crash. As captain, my fiancé gave the only life-saving equipment to his first love. I did not argue nor protest. Instead, I accepted it gladly. Because in my past life, when he had to choose between two people, my fiancé was also the captain chose to give the life-saving equipment to me, as I was pregnant at that time. The plane made an emergency landing. His first love, who had no life-saving equipment, tragically died upon impact. After that, I, the pregnant survivor, naturally married my fiancé. But on our wedding night, he locked me in the basement and brutally beat me with a baseball bat until I miscarried. If you hadn't used your pregnancy to force me to give you the life-saving equipment, Victoria wouldn't have died so horribly. He forced me to kneel in front of his first love's grave and slam my forehead against the ground 999 times. Then he made me get pregnant and abort over and over again as punishment for my supposed crime. I was tortured until I completely broke and ended my own life. When I opened my eyes again, all the memories of my past life came back. This time, I fulfilled his wish. Chapter 1. The entire cabin was in utter chaos, shaking violently as the plane plunged downward. Less than 10 minutes remained before impact. I protected my swollen belly, pressing myself firmly against the seat back, my face utterly pale. The co-pilot, who was distributing the life-saving equipment, wore the same grim expression as me. Because there was only one piece of life-saving equipment left. And in the last row, both Victoria and I had none. Victoria, the first love of my fiancé, Luis. The cockpit door burst open and Luis came striding out. The moment she saw him, Victoria's eyes filled with tears. Luis, I'm so scared. She was beautiful, her delicate almond-shaped eyes clouded with a watery shine. Luis didn't even look at me. Instead, he wrapped her in his arms, his voice soft and comforting. Don't be afraid, I'll protect you. He whispered sweet words to the woman he adored, completely forgetting about his 7-month pregnant fiancée sitting just one step away. It wasn't until the co-pilot reminded him that Luis finally remembered my existence. When our eyes met, his expression twisted in disgust. I warned you pregnant women bring bad luck on flights. But you insisted on coming just because you were jealous. Now you've doomed everyone on this plane. Are you satisfied? Luis was known as the most handsome and charismatic captain in the entire airline. Passengers trusted him blindly. Hearing him, all those who were already terrified erupted in fury, cursing and insulting me and my unborn child. A 5-year-old boy even threw a metal toy airplane at my head. The sharp wing tore my forehead and blood immediately began to flow. As the plane plummeted, the passengers channeled all their rage at me. Amidst it all, Victoria's eyes sparkled with triumph and mockery. She sobbed weakly and clung to Luis's arm. But Luis, there's only one piece of life-saving equipment left. What should we do? Tears slid down her cheeks as she spoke. Maybe you should give it to Anna. She's carrying your child. I just want to spend my final moments with you. Luis's eyes instantly turned red. No, Victoria. Meeting you was the greatest blessing of my life. I won't let anything happen to you. Without hesitation, he took the only life-saving equipment and placed it on Victoria. The cabin erupted in applause. Everyone was touched by their love story. Except for the co-pilot who shouted desperately, Captain, what about your pregnant fiancé? Less than 2 minutes until impact. But Luis only looked at me coldly. You planned all this, didn't you? This time, I would fulfill his wish. I would disappear from his life forever. Chapter 2. In the crucial last moment, the co-pilot tried to remove his own life-saving equipment to give it to me. But I stopped him. I looked up, observing Luis's astonished expression with absolute calm. In the final seconds before the plane exploded, I silently mouthed, I don't love you anymore. And I don't want your child either. Then I let go of my belly. And in that second of free fall, my consciousness faded, until my entire body plunged into the icy, deadly ocean. The blast wave from the explosion shattered my bones completely. My swollen belly sank unnaturally. My ears went deaf. The world fell silent. Hot blood streamed from my head, burning my frozen face with a strange warmth. The deep blue sea was already stained red. I floated alone, disoriented, my vision clouded by rings of light. Through the glare, I saw wreckage of the shattered plane. Above the debris rescue helicopters, a rescue cable descended, and Luis, holding Victoria tightly, was rising. She was completely unharmed. But before they could ascend further, the co-pilot, his forehead bloodied, furiously blocked them. I squinted, reading his lips through the haze of my vision. The co-pilot shouted, "You bastard! Your wife and your child are still in the sea, and all you care about is saving your ex." He was truly outraged on my behalf, even though we weren't even close. But at least this time he survived. Not far away, Luis looked even angrier than the co-pilot. Victoria twisted her ankle. Luis snapped, "Do you know how serious that is for a prodigy ballerina like her? And why didn't I save my wife and child? That's none of your business." Then Luis suddenly let out a cold laugh, his gaze full of contempt. "Oh, or are you sleeping with her? Is that why you care so much?" Even after witnessing his cruelty, his words pierced through my soul. The co-pilot turned pale with anger, but he did not back down. He insisted that they should take me to the hospital first. But Luis coldly warned, "Simon, you're just a rookie co-pilot. I'm one of the examiners for your certification. If you keep interfering, I can make sure you'll never fly again." Simon clenched his jaw, but refused to yield. Luis's voice grew even colder. "You may not care, but does your girlfriend at the control tower not care either?" Simon's face instantly paled. He hesitated. Luis smiled with satisfaction upon seeing his subordinate falter under pressure. As if acting out of pure mercy, he cast a condescending glance at Simon, then looked at me with disdain, a cold smile on his lips. "Don't be fooled by her pitiful act. She's a master at twisting the truth, playing the victim and lying. Back then, she made me believe that Victoria had hired thugs to attack her. I rushed to rescue her and ended up missing the most important competition of Victoria's life. Later I found out it had all been a trap. She planned every detail just to ruin Victoria's career. She's a cruel woman. She tricked me into getting her pregnant and then used the baby to force me to commit to her. And now she's trying to pull the same trick again to murder Victoria. I've long since seen through her manipulations. If she wants to play the victim and freeze to death at sea, then let her freeze." Without looking back, he turned decisively. Luis tightened his hold on Victoria, who lay fainted in his arms, but with a healthy blush on her cheeks and a peaceful expression. Then he carried her up to the rescue helicopter. The helicopter blades stirred up massive waves on the sea's surface. My body was exhausted, unable to hold on any longer. When the final wave struck, meth darkness swallowed me whole. Chapter 3. Luis and I weren't always like this. Before our senior year of high school, I was his everything. The passwords to his phone and computer were my birthday. But our relationship started to deteriorate when Victoria, the daughter of my family's housekeeper, transferred into our class. 2 weeks after her arrival, one morning while I was going down the stairs, I slipped and broke my leg. At that time, I was preparing for an important ballet competition. Victoria took my place. That's when I realized she had also studied ballet. And she was very good. Luis thought so too. During the 2 weeks I spent at home recovering, Victoria became Luis's new desk mate. It was he who suggested it. Because Victoria had been bullied by my best friends in the bathroom, and Luis just happened to pass by and saved her. Chapter 4. From that day on, Luis became Victoria's knight. And I became the hated and irrelevant villain in their intertwined romance. I end my past life. I refused to accept that Luis was being taken from me, acting childish and jealous. Even when Victoria set me up, I couldn't find evidence in time, which made Luis hate me more and more. In the end, he even blocked me and told both families that he would never marry me. That Victoria was the only love of his life. My heart shattered. I fell into severe depression, and I went abroad to study for 4 years. But when I returned, I discovered that Victoria had also gone abroad. Luis, devastated, drowned in sadness and loneliness, and without realizing it, I was by his side again, supporting him. I encouraged him to pursue his dreams. He chose to become a pilot so he could personally fly Victoria to her competitions. My original plan was to let him go. But on the night when Victoria and Luis fought and broke up, Luis got drunk and forced himself on me. Afterwards, he held up a drug test report on his drink and accused me of being a shameless and deceitful woman. But in truth, I didn't know who had drugged him either. Yet that night, I became pregnant. Under pressure from his parents, Luis was forced to get engaged to me. During that time, Victoria returned to the country, and Luis stopped coming home, spending his nights at her apartment. That drove the old me crazy with jealousy. Desperate to catch him cheating, I booked the same flight as Victoria, and at the crucial moment, I pulled out the contract her father had signed with me, which stated that if I died, Luis wouldn't receive a single cent. Only then did Luis agree to give me the survival equipment. But what I never imagined was that Luis never loved me. Not me, nor the child in my belly. Now that I have a second chance at life, it's time to cut my losses. Chapter 5. When I opened my eyes again, the first thing I saw was a cold, white ceiling. I was lying in the intensive care unit, breathing weakly through a ventilator. Upon seeing me awake, the nurse was filled with joy. 10 of your ribs are fractured, both eardrums severely damaged, your skull is broken, and your lungs were punctured. It's a miracle you're still alive. She spoke quickly, but my mind was still trapped in the memories of my past life. Even my soul trembled with pain. Half a month later, I was discharged from the hospital. Luis didn't show up even once. During that time, his father called him countless times, but Luis ignored all the calls, convinced that I had deceived his parents to create a false story, hate me more and more. In the end, he even blocked me and told both families that he would never marry me. That Victoria was the only love of his life. My heart shattered. I fell into severe depression, and I went abroad to study for 4 years. But when I returned, I discovered that Victoria had also gone abroad. Luis, devastated, drowned in sadness and loneliness, and without realizing it, I was by his side again, supporting him. I encouraged him to pursue his dreams. He chose to become a pilot so he could personally fly Victoria to her competitions. My original plan was to let him go. But on the night when Victoria and Luis fought and broke up, Luis got drunk and forced himself on me. Afterwards, he held up a drug test report on his drink and accused me of being a shameless and deceitful woman. But in truth, I didn't know who had drugged him either. Yet that night, I became pregnant. Under pressure from his parents, Luis was forced to get engaged to me. During that time, Victoria returned to the country, and Luis stopped coming home, spending his nights at her apartment. That drove the old me crazy with jealousy. Desperate to catch him cheating, I booked the same flight as Victoria, and at the crucial moment, I pulled out the contract her father had signed with me, which stated that if I died, Luis wouldn't receive a single cent. Only then did Luis agree to give me the survival equipment. But what I never imagined was that Luis never loved me. Not me, nor the child in my belly. Now that I have a second chance at life, it's time to cut my losses. Chapter 5. When I opened my eyes again, the first thing I saw was a cold, white ceiling. I was lying in the intensive care unit, breathing weakly through a ventilator. Upon seeing me awake, the nurse was filled with joy. 10 of your ribs are fractured, both eardrums severely damaged, your skull is broken, and your lungs were punctured. It's a miracle you're still alive. She spoke quickly, but my mind was still trapped in the memories of my past life. Even my soul trembled with pain. Half a month later, I was discharged from the hospital. Luis didn't show up even once. During that time, his father called him countless times, but Luis ignored all the calls, convinced that I had deceived his parents to create a false story. You even called me. I'd already reviewed your medical records. There's no record of a miscarriage. Even your injuries were minor, just a few bruises, not even a fracture. He shook his head as he spoke, his hatred so intense it seemed almost tangible. How can you be so shameless? Just to get attention, you staged a funeral to curse your own child. As he spoke, he turned to those present. Don't be fooled by her. She's a despicable woman, obsessed with competing with other women. She has no purpose in life. She only knows how to cling to men. You'd better leave before she scams you into donating for this fake funeral. He spoke with such conviction, as if he had exposed some grand lie. If not for the fact that everyone had already seen my baby's ashes and the scars on my abdomen, perhaps they really would have believed him. Luis's parents, their faces dark with shame, tried to pull him away to stop him from humiliating himself further. But Luis pushed them away harshly. Dad, Mom, I told you from the start I didn't want to marry this woman, but you forced me. Look at what she's done to our family now. Our reputation has been destroyed by this lying, disgusting woman. Luis, that's enough. I rolled my wheelchair forward, calmly interrupting him. Luis looked down at me with disdain in his eyes.
What?
You can lie, but you can't stand being exposed. I shook my head, pulled the medical records and divorce papers from my bag, and handed them to him with a calm expression. I don't want your father and mother to be humiliated any further because of you. Luis froze when he saw the documents in my hand, but he still sneered. Do you really think that forging a medical report identical to Victoria's will make me believe you? In the next moment, I lifted my shirt, revealing my abdomen covered in deep, torn scars. I didn't have a life jacket. When the plane exploded, my belly was torn open. I sighed softly, my voice filled with resignation. I didn't lie to you, Luis. The baby really is gone. With just one look, Luis's face turned as pale as death. How is this possible? He stepped back slightly, his eyes fixed on the scars. His hands trembled, wanting to touch them, but not daring to. But then, as if remembering something, his arrogance returned in an instant. With a cold, harsh voice, he said, Even if you want a divorce, this is just the karma you deserve. I've already found evidence that you were the one who hired those thugs to set up Victoria years ago. If you try to pull any more dirty tricks, the next thing you lose won't just be your child. His words made everyone present hold their breath. Chapter 7. Luis's parents were so furious at their son for his cruel accusations that they were left speechless. At that moment, my former class president stepped out from the crowd. His tone was confused as he asked, Are you talking about the national ballet competition in the summer of our final year? Because I remember Anna never got to participate that day. She was attacked and tortured by a gang of thugs. Luis scoffed and interrupted him.
Huh.
Is that what she told you? Those thugs were clearly hired by her to ambush Victoria on her way to the competition. That's not true. The vice president of the class interrupted, exchanging a glance with the head of the sports committee before speaking. Those thugs were attacking Anna. If the class president, the sports committee leader, and I hadn't passed by and called the police, she would have been in serious trouble. As soon as he spoke, other classmates began to confirm. Anna returned to school that day accompanied by the police. If she had truly orchestrated the whole thing, the police would have found out long ago. Luis hadn't expected the conversation to take this turn. His expression grew darker and darker, yet he still refused to believe it. His lips parted as if to argue, but no words came out. It was then that his assistant burst into the room, his face full of urgency. Boss, we found the evidence. The police did arrest suspects for an armed assault case back then. The main culprit was only released from prison 4 years ago. Luis immediately asked, Did the main suspect say Anna was behind it all? The assistant stammered, and no, the main suspect didn't speak, but the accomplices turned over their chat records. They confessed that the person who paid them to carry out the attack was Victoria. Luis was petrified as if struck by lightning. Meanwhile, I remained calm from beginning to end. I had already screamed myself hoarse trying to explain the truth to him over and over again, but he never believed me. With the divorce papers in hand, I slid my wheelchair next to him and spoke calmly. None of this matters anymore. Just sign. Upon hearing my voice, Luis turned to look at me. But the moment our eyes met, he flinched as if burned by boiling oil. He didn't want to accept that I was innocent, so he immediately searched for another reason to blame me. Even if you didn't set Victoria up, you're the one who drugged me, aren't you? I listened silently without answering. But then a weary, elderly voice abruptly interrupted. I was the one who drugged you.
It was his mother speaking.
Chapter 8. Anna is a girl your father and I watched grow up. We know her character better than anyone. Luis's mother's voice was hoarse, her eyes reflecting exhaustion. When Victoria left you, when you were on the brink of collapse, it was Anna who stayed by your side. She cared for you, so she wanted to look after you in our place because we were already two old people. Do you still remember the vow you made on Anna's parents' deathbed? She pointed a trembling finger at Luis, her rage contained in every word. You told them not to worry, that you would take care of her for the rest of your life. And this is how you fulfill your promise? You tortured her until she ended up like this. You even allowed her to lose her baby. Do you even know that while you were out having your fun, the doctors diagnosed Hershey will never be able to dance again for the rest of her life? Is this what you meant by taking care of her? You damned bastard. Luis's mother seemed to have aged 10 years in an instant. She collapsed into her husband's arms as if she no longer had tears left to shed. Luis stood motionless in the middle of the crowd like a solitary island, finally waking up to reality. A pathetic joke. His eyes darted about in desperation and, for the first time in his life, the man who had always been so dominant looked completely lost. How is it possible that it was you? His mother let out a bitter laugh.
Why?
Because back then you drowned yourself in alcohol every day. And when you were drunk, the name you kept repeating wasn't Victoria's, it was Anna's. I thought that deep down you still loved Anna. That's why I went to the doctor and got the medicine. Her voice was hollow, devoid of any emotion. It was all my fault. If you want to hate someone, hate me. Luis fell silent, as if his entire world had just collapsed. Suddenly, as if clutching at a last burning nail, he turned to me with a look full of desperate hope. Then what about the incident in high school? When your friends bullied Victoria in the bathroom? That wasn't a lie, was it? His accusation echoed through the room, but this time, only sarcastic laughter and scoffs of disdain were heard. Chapter 9. Everyone looked at Luis as if he were an idiot. Our school is an international academy. There are security cameras even at the entrance of the bathroom. If you had an ounce of common sense, you'd know all it takes is to review the footage to verify the truth. What's wrong? Don't tell me you believed Victoria's words without even watching the recordings. My best friend from high school sneered coldly. Luis stood frozen, clearly uncomfortable. He had always believed that Victoria was a poor, defenseless, and helpless girl. That was why he thought he needed to protect her. In his eyes, people like us hosts from wealthy families were the villains. Arrogant and irrationally privileged.
But we never changed.
The only one who changed was him. Let it go. Even if you're convinced I was the villain, I've already paid for it. I spoke calmly, firmly pushing the divorce papers into his hands. My patience had reached its limit. Sign and leave. Luis hadn't expected such a reaction. He stood there disoriented, as if he didn't know what to do. As if he had just now realized I was serious. His voice trembled with disbelief. You really want a divorce? I stared at him, wondering if the truth had finally hit him like a bucket of ice water. At that his voice was hoarse and broken, full of sorrow and infinite regret. I looked up at him, my expression calm and indifferent. I've already filed for divorce.
You just need to sign.
As if my indifferent tone had wounded him deeply, Luis's haggard, exhausted face twisted into a bitter smile. Anna, can we not divorce? I've finally woken up. I realize now how terribly wrong I was. Please, can you give me one more chance to make it right? Let's live a good life together. Let me be your knight again. I looked down and rejected him coldly. No, Luis trembled, his eyes reddened, even his chapped lips began to quiver. He staggered to my side and slowly dropped to his knees, his voice drenched in remorse. I had someone investigate, and in the end, I found out that Victoria transferred schools just to get close to me. Everything she said about being bullied was a complete lie. She orchestrated it all herself. His gaze slowly traveled over my legs covered by the blanket, his pale and haggard face contorting in pain. I'm sorry. Anna, I shouldn't have doubted you. I was wrong, I was an idiot. Victoria, she's even filthier than I ever imagined. The baby she's carrying isn't mine, it's her first loves from her hometown. And our so-called first time together. She had actually undergone surgery to restore her virginity beforehand. Enough. I interrupted him coldly, no longer interested in hearing his disgusting confessions. I set the book aside and turned to him with a sarcastic smile. So, according to you, now that you've finally realized how disgusting Victoria is, you come crawling back to beg for my forgiveness? Now that she has betrayed you, suddenly, you see my worth? Because she cheated on you, now you feel obligated to clear my name? I let out a cold laugh, as if I had just heard the most ridiculous excuse ever spoken by a pathetic man. Tell me something, Luis, what if Victoria really were a good woman? What if this was all just your imagination? Does that mean I deserved all the pain you caused me? What did I ever do wrong? Luis froze, his lips trembling, unable to answer. His eyes showed such deep remorse and pain, it was as if he were being devoured by his own guilt. I'm sorry. In the end, he finally realized that the pain he had caused me was something he could never make up for in this lifetime. His whole body curled up in agony, bending over as he let out a heart-wrenching wail like a dying animal. But my heart remained untouched. I motioned to the housekeeper to open the door. Sir, for the sake of your first love, you killed my child and ruined my life. I will never dance again. Your sins have no redemption. Because I will never, ever forgive you. The moment you stole my last survival kit, any bond we had was completely severed.
Crack.
The sound of something breaking. Luis raised his trembling hand, revealing his open palm, as if offering a token of peace. Inside it was the birthday gift I had given him when I was 16, a small glass button engraved with the words, Big Brother Luis's little forgiveness button. At 16, I had smiled mischievously as I gave it to him. If you ever make me angry, this button will save your life. But remember, you only get one chance. Luis, at 17, had laughed and teased me, and what if you get so angry nothing I do can make up for it? At 16, I had puffed up my cheeks, my almond-shaped eyes widening in disbelief. What? If I'm not angry, it means you did something really, really horrible. In that case, I would never forgive you. Time had passed in a whisper. That silly joke Luis made at 17 had now become the final sentence for the 25-year-old Luis. After that day, Luis returned to his country. Meanwhile, under the care of my physician abroad, I gradually regained the ability to walk and even to dance. During that time, I completely disconnected from the outside world. It wasn't until Luis's father's birthday that I finally boarded a flight back home. When Luis's parents picked me up at the airport, their hair was completely white. I was stunned. They hesitated for a long time. It wasn't until after I had paid my respects to my parents and my baby that they finally spoke. Luis has been sentenced to death. The execution is next week. I was frozen. A chilly autumn breeze blew, raising goosebumps on my skin.
Why? I asked.
Luis's father spoke with a grave and solemn voice. When he returned from abroad, it was like he had lost his soul. He locked himself in his room and refused to get up. His fever spiked to 40 degrees, and for 2 whole days, he was completely delirious. When he finally woke up, the first thing he said was, "Mom, Dad, I think I killed Anna, your aunt, and I were terrified. We couldn't locate you at the time, and only when an old friend went to see you and confirmed you were safe and sound could we breathe again." A shiver ran through my body. A ridiculous thought crossed my mind. Could it be that Luis had been reborn too? Luis's father didn't notice my reaction and continued. But from that day on, Luis became more and more unstable. He took out all the things in the house related to you and spent days and nights going through them, laughing and crying at the same time. He kept muttering things like, "Why was I so stupid? Why did I hurt Anna? It wasn't Anna's fault. Why did I reincarnate so late?" At that point, Luis's father's voice broke. His wrinkled face was already covered in tears. Luis's mother continued. Your uncle and I tried to take him to see a psychologist, but on the way, he jumped out of the car and ran away. We never saw him again. The next news we received was from the police. They found him in an underground basement along with 2 corpses that had been tortured until they were reduced to mere skeletons. The bodies were so decomposed they were unrecognizable. It took me a moment to find my voice.
Who were the victims?
She let out a heavy sigh. One was Victoria, and the other was her first love from her hometown, the same man who helped her hire those thugs to hurt you. After that day, I went to ask a friend who was investigating the case. It was through him that I finally learned the whole truth. After the funeral, Victoria's nightmare began. Not only was her career completely destroyed, but all the dirty details of her past came to light. Luis finally saw her true face and erased all traces of her from his life. At first, Victoria thought she could use her pregnancy to force him to stay, but when Luis regained his composure, he became colder than ever. He threw down 2 DNA reports, one confirming he was not the father, and the other proving that the real father was Victoria's first love. Luis had been deceived all along. Victoria had always been a parasite, surviving by clinging to Luis, without having any power or resources of her own. After losing her dream of becoming a rich man's wife, she had no choice but to go back to her first love. But that man was nothing more than a drunkard, a gambler, and a womanizer. Not long after, he squandered all of Victoria's savings. Falling from wealth back into poverty became a nightmare for him, one he couldn't accept. He unleashed all his anger on Victoria, using her as his personal punching bag. When Victoria could no longer endure the abuse, her hatred towards me reached its peak. That's when she came up with the idea to kidnap me and demand a ransom. But Luis had been watching them the entire time. Before they could catch a flight to hunt me down, Luis ambushed them on the highway, crashing his car at full speed and flipping it over. Later, the police report revealed that the reborn Luis had suffered from severe mental instability due to the trauma of his past mistakes. He had developed schizophrenia and violent manic disorder. Because of this, he was declared unfit for the death penalty. Instead, he would spend the rest of his life locked away in a psychiatric hospital. Before visiting Luis in the psychiatric ward, I put on a white dress, the one I had loved the most in my previous life. The moment he saw me, Luis cried. Tears of blood. He knelt on the padded floor, his thin and fragile body wrapped in his hospital gown. I asked him just one question. How did you die? In a single second, his face went pale. He realized that I, too, had been reborn. No wonder, no matter how hard I tried, I could never win you back. Luis let out a bitter laugh. He lifted his stiff, trembling fingers and pointed to his heart, his voice hoarse. I was stabbed, right in the heart, by my own hand. Then he smiled with an expression of madness and despair. I was a fool. 3 days after you died, my co-pilot found out the truth. Just like in this life, he never believed you were the villain. I let out a soft sigh and turned away. I didn't want to hear any more. Everything he said only made all of this feel even more ironic. Just as I reached the door, Luis asked me one last question. If you could go back to that night when you were 17, would you make the same wish? I didn't answer. I didn't look back. I just kept walking. Half a month later, on a cold, dark night, I received the news. Luis had used a hidden plastic bag and ended his life. When I got the news, I was boarding a plane bound for Scandinavia. The pilot was Simon. He stood at the boarding gate, greeting the passengers. When he saw me, he gave a faint smile. As I passed by him, I whispered a soft wish. Congratulations on your wedding. The plane took off smoothly, rising into the sky. I gazed at the vast blue horizon. For the first time in a long time, I felt like the storm had finally passed.